Hi, everybody. Good to see some faces that I remember and know. If you have your, um, wonderful to see. If more people could put on if it's possible. Yeah, great. Thank you. To put on the screen. It's really wonderful to see people. Obviously, I miss camp very much, and I'm sure many people do. And even those who are in camp probably miss camp. So it's really I think that the topic that we're going to talk today in some level um, has to do with missing things. Okay. um, I'll explain what I mean. I called this topic, I don't remember what I called it. Rav Adi may help me, but I think the topic was different models of dealing with tragedy. Is that correct, Rav Adi? Something like that. So obviously the big tragedy that I'm thinking here when we talk about this year is the Churban. We are at least in Israel, we are just a day before the beginning of the 3 weeks, and Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and 3 weeks, and Tisha B'Av. So we're really in the eve of remembering and reliving and commemorating the Churban of Beit HaMikdash in many ways. But I think that today's Shiur is not just about remembering the Churban, but rather every time that we have a Ga'agua. I never know if there's a good word for Ga'agua in English, but when we miss and we feel that we wish to commemorate a loss in our lives, I think that this year is relevant. And I will tell you a little secret that the share that I'm giving now, I actually saw the main idea that I'm talking about. I saw it last year in camp when I was in the Bet Midrash in Camp Stone, and I was learning this topic, and then the sheer topic was really only about Churban Beit HaMikdash. But since I learned this last year in camp, my father passed away, and I'm also about to finish Kaddish in 2 weeks already. It's been a very long and quick year, and the yard site comes up also in a few weeks, obviously. And I'm adding to today's shiur when I talk about ga'agua and loss and dealing with loss. So I think that this shiur is appropriate because it's not only about the big losses, the big tragedies like Churban Beit HaMikdash, but it also has special meaning to personal losses. So when we face tragedy and when we face loss, there are two different maslulim, the two different ways we can go when we deal with the tragedy. One is on a philosophical and theological level, right? That's a level which I am not going to talk about today. On that level, a person many times asks themselves, why? Why did this event happen? Why did Hashem do this to us? What's the meaning of the loss? What's the meaning of a tragedy? Obviously, this is a type of question which any person who has a connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu, any person who understands that the events that take place in the world are somehow related to Kadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not going to go into all right now. I said that's not my topic right now, but that's something that a person who understands that Kadosh Baruch Hu has a connection to this world. Again, what is that connection, and how do we understand Hashgacha, B'chira Chofshit? These are questions which I'm not going to go into right now, and these questions are sometimes very, very difficult. I just want to mention that it was Rav Soloveitchik, I think, who really came to our aid. I actually think came to our aid when he writes in at least one or two places that a religious person should not focus so much on the why, but rather on where does this take us now? What do we do with the tragedy, with the loss? When we dwell in the past of why it happened, that can sometimes lead us to great despair. However, I'm not interested so much in the theological or philosophical question of why a tragedy happened. I am more interested in the question, how do we commemorate? How do we live the memory of this tragedy? So the Gemara Masechet Sukkah, and Daf Mem Aleph, tells us that Barishona haya lulav nital b'mikdash shiva, ubamedina yom echad. Originally, the lulav would be taken, would be nital in the Mikdash all 7 days, but in the Medina, everywhere else besides the Beit HaMikdash, mitzvat lulav is only on the first day of Yom Tov. U'lkachtem lachem bayom harishon. Why was lulav taken in the Mikdash al Shiva? Because of the pasuk usmachtem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem shivat yamim. The Torah tells us that you must take lulav. That you must have simcha 7 days, and simcha includes taking the arba minim all 7 days. However, the Mishnah goes on and tells us, Mishecharav Beit HaMikdash, Itkina Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shiur lulav nital b'medina shiva, zeicher la'mikdash. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, as we know, lived in one of the most crucial times in Jewish history. And it could very well be that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is one of those unique characters who, on his shoulders, lay the future of the Jewish people. And he was in this very, very sensitive junction of ma'avar, of moving from a world with a mikdash to a new world, a new religious world, a new reality. Just imagine the despair of the Jewish community at the time when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. We know the midrashim, how people wanted to stop to eat, and they wanted to stop to drink, and the feeling that it's all over, there's nothing to live for. It was people like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai who had to educate the people and to help them move to a new stage, a new reality. I really think that he probably had one of the most challenging tasks in Jewish history. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was involved in creating the phrase Zeicher LaMikdash. From now on, in the example of lulav, he said, we have to shake the lulav all Shiva, all 7 days, because of Zeicher LaMikdash, to remember what happened in the Mikdash. Rav Soloveitchik, in his Shiurim on this Gemara, asks a very simple question. But the truth is, before I read the Rav on this, I have to continue in the Gemara. The Gemara, right after the Mishnah, asks, Minalan da'avdinan zecher la'mikdash. What's the source that you have to make a zecher la'mikdash? Amar B'Yochanan, de'amar kra, ki ele aruchalach u'mimakotech erpe'ech ne'um Hashem. כי נדחה קראו לך, ציון היא דורש, אין לה, ודורש אין לה. מכלל דבאי דרישה. The Gemara understands, Pasuk in Yirmiyahu, that Zion needs drisha. Zion is Yerushalayim, needs us to be doreshet, to look for it, to commemorate it. The Pasuk in Yirmiyahu, it teaches us, says the Gemara, that we have to commemorate Yerushalayim and the Mikdash. Says Rav Soloveitchik, asked Rav Soloveitchik, at least it's printed in the book Rishimat Shiurim, in a book, you can see the book, It's a book of Rabbi Soloveitchik's, one of his Talmidim, wrote down his Shiurim. And he asks a very simple question. Minalan da'avdinan zechel hamikdash. He brings the Gemara. And he says the following. The Gemara in Baba Batra, Daf Samech, mentions minagei avilut bizman hazeh sheim zechel hamikdash. כגון שסד אדם את ביתו בסיד משאר בו אמה על אמה כנגד הפתח, זכר המקדש. וכן מנהג שימת האפר בראשי החתנים זכר המקדש. Right, the Gemara says that since the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, we have minhagim to zechel hamikdash. One of them is to leave an area in your home not finished. You leave an amma in the entrance of the house. You don't finish the painting of the house, and we have a minhag that we put afer, we put ashes on top of the forehead of a chatan. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this minhag. Many people know the minhag of breaking a glass, which in the Gemara doesn't really seem to be necessarily connected directly to the Beit HaMikdash. The Gemara actually, when it mentions breaking a kos, mentions the idea of breaking and not creating an atmosphere of too much. When people sometimes celebrate and they go a bit crazy, so you have to calm people down. That's what the Gemara really says about breaking the glass. But the minhag of putting ashes, afer, on the head of a chatan, that is, the Gemara says, Zechel HaMikdash. And then the Gemara goes on in Baba Batra that the source of these minhagim is the famous pasuk, Yimishkachech Yerushalayim, Yishkach Yemini. The Gemara in Baba Batra quotes that pasuk. And Rabbi Soloveitchik asks a very simple question, Ulichora kashe, Lama lo hivia Gemara didan, oto pasuk, right? Why does the Gemara in Baba Batra, unlike the Gemara in Sukkah, bring a different pasuk? Why do we have two different psukim that mention the idea of Zechel HaMikdash? And the answer is, V'nireh, says Rav Soloveitchik, Shebezechel HaMikdash yesh shnei dinim. As you know, Rav Soloveitchik, being a brisker, has to always answer that there are two halachas to everything, right? I used to always joke about it when I was younger. I used to say, we used to learn, I learned in yeshiva that was very much associated with Rav Kook. I learned in a yeshiva called Oret Zion, Druckman's yeshiva. But I also learned, Rav Soloveitchik. So it used to be that the difference was Rav Kook, everything is one, right? Everything is united to one. The whole world, everything is one. And according to Rav Soloveitchik and the Briskers, everything is two. And then you get to the army, you realize everything is actually three. So this is different ways of counting. But anyway, says the Rav, B'zechel HaMikdash yesh shnei dinim. Aleph, Hilchot avilut zechel HaMikdash. Zoi HaGemara Baba Batra. היסוד של דינים אלו נלמד מהפסוק משכחך ירושלים, לזכור ירושלים כפי שהייתה ולהתאבל על חורבנה. ב' לזכור את המצוות הקשורות למקדש. היינו לעלות על ליבנו את המקדש כשיהיה בבניינו. אין בכך חלות אבילות על העבר, אלא קיום על שם העתיד שהמקדש ייבנה. When I read this idea, I really, really liked it. Because it is true that we probably would say to ourselves, this is not such a big chiddush, because we actually have two different phrases, if you notice. One is Zechel HaMikdash, and one is Zechel HaChurban. Right? Zechel HaChurban would include all the minhagim that we commemorate the loss of the Mikdash, when we put ashes on the head of the Chatan. But let's say it as it is. What is 3 weeks? What is Tisha B'Av? What is all the fast days? they are all zecher lachurban. We remember the destruction of the Mikdash. However, shaking a lulav is a zecher lamikdash. That's the phrase the Gemara uses. What other zecher lamikdashes do we have? So we all remember Korech, right? The night of Pesach, we sit and we eat matzah, like the way they used to eat the Korban Pesach according to Hillel. We wrap the matzah in the maror and we eat a sandwich. Zecher lamikdash. Now let's really pay attention to what is the difference between a zecher lamikdash and a zecher lachurban. According to what we learned today, just now, there are two different psukim. There are two different sources. But the truth is because they are two very different minhagim. Zecher lachurban is about the fact that we have no bet mikdash. We act in certain ways, we do different minhagim to remember the loss, that there is no mikdash. However, zecher la-mikdash, that's zecher la-churban. However, zecher la-mikdash is about keeping certain laws, minhagim, that were kept in the time of the mikdash. I'll give you another good example. Sfirat HaOmer. Sfirat HaOmer, according to the Gemara in Masechet Menachot, there's an opinion that says that it's also a zecher la-mikdash. Now, besides the difference of that one is an act which makes us sad and remember the loss, and one is reacting certain minhagim that were done in the time of the Mikdash. I think the main difference is whether or not what we're doing makes us actually sad. Think about it. The zecher lachurban is supposed to make us sad. We're supposed to suddenly stop a second and cry. We're supposed to say to ourselves, "Oh my gosh, what we're doing right now reminds us that we have no mikdash. How can we go right tikkun chatzot?" That's I'm sure all of you no. Has anyone ever done tikkun chatzot? But the idea of crying that there's no mikdash, and obviously the 3 weeks and the bet and Tisha B'Av, it's all about helping us remember the loss, but it's about making us sad ultimately. However, zecher lamikdash, have you ever seen someone sit in the night of Pesach when they ate korech and they started crying in the middle that there's no Beit HaMikdash? Is someone supposed to shake a lulav during Shivat Yimei Chag? Is someone supposed to cry when they shake lulav and they say, "Oh, zecher lamikdash, this is so terrible. We have no Beit HaMikdash"? I'll show you where this question might actually come up. There's a very famous question of the Baal HaMaor. The Baal HaMaor, the end of Pesachim, asks, why is it that on the first day of Sfirat HaOmer, we don't make the bracha of Shechianu? Just like we make a Shechianu on every mitzvah that we do for the first time, we should make a Shechianu on Sfirat HaOmer. So Rav Adi's father-in-law, his book that he put out of Rav Soloveitchik, that green book, I forgot its name. I have it up here in my library, but he mentions this discussion, and Rav Soloveitchik has a beautiful idea about this. But the Baal HaMaor answers very simply: there's no Shechianu for Sfirat HaOmer because Sfirat HaOmer is a zecher lamikdash, and as such, when we do Sfirat HaOmer, we are actually sad that there's no Mikdash. Shechianu is all about being happy. How can a person say Shechianu on something that makes him sad? But perhaps we can argue, with all due respect, with the Baal HaMaor and say, Baal HaMaor, it's not a Zecher LaMikdash, it's not a Zecher LaChurban, Sfirat HaOmer, it's a Zecher LaMikdash. For example, the Baal HaMaor, what would happen if Yom Tov came, if the first day of Yom Tov of Sukkot came out on Shabbos? and we would only shake lulav the first time on Chol HaMoed. So the halacha is you make a shechianu. Would anyone argue that you don't make a shechianu because lulav at that point is a zecher lachurban? No, it's a zecher lamigdash, and we make a shechianu. So it could very well be that one would argue that that's exactly the difference. Zecher lamigdash doesn't make us sad. Zecher lachurban does, and it could very well be that that is the core difference between a zecher lamigdash and zecher lachurban. When Chazal, as if sat down and tried to create different methods of remembering the loss of the Mikdash, they created two maslulim, two paths. Okay, one is a zecher lamigdash and one's zecher lachurban. And as I think you all understanding what I'm about to say, I guess you all, if you followed my introduction, I think that what Chazal are giving us here are not only two maslulim for commemorating the loss of the Mikdash, but they are also suggesting to us that these are two methods of commemorating the loss even on a private level. When tragedy hits us on a private and personal level, there are two different ways of commemorating the loss. One are certain acts that we do to remember the loss, and that makes us sad. That makes us cry. That makes us feel how much we miss that person or that event. And yet, there are also another way of commemoration, which is reliving, reacting certain behaviors, certain actions that person did in his life that doesn't necessarily make us sad right now. It can make us sometimes happy in a funny twist, but it makes us live the loss, and it makes us want to one day get back to that, to relive that person's life. Just last week, we had a very special evening commemorating 10 years for Deborah, my wife's brother, Mark, who died 10 years ago from cancer. He was a very young guy when he died. And we had a Zoom Shiur event, which had over 500 people on it. Something that you could not do without Zoom. And at some point of the evening, they asked people to tell stories about Mark. And interestingly enough, a lot of the stories brought smiles to people. And people were actually, laughing when they remembered certain stories. And I felt that part was a zecher lamigdash. That part of the evening was a zecher lachurban, but part is a zecher lamigdash. When I talk about my Abba, and I give shiurim, and I sometimes tell stories of him, and I find that I'm laughing, and I am enjoying his memory, and I'm reliving his memory in a way that makes us miss him, but also makes us remember his life in a positive way, that we are reliving the person's life, not as a zecher lachurban, but more as a zecher lamigdash. So I think that when Chazal established these maslulim in order for us to commemorate the Mikdash, they did it in a very brilliant way, because the two different ways of zecher lamigdash and zecher lachurban are very different ways of commemoration, but together they create a ga'agua. Together they create, on one hand, a feeling that we miss the Beit HaMikdash and how our lives are lacking the Beit HaMikdash, but by reacting certain minhagim that we had in the Mikdash today, we create even more of a ga'agua, not necessarily in a sad and tragic way, but more of a ga'agua. Wow, we really want the Beit HaMikdash, because remember the Mikdash, we used to, Sfirat HaOmer reminds us of the Mikdash, and Lulav reminds us of the Mikdash. And by the way, lighting Hanukkah candles reminds us of the Mikdash. These are all minhagim and mitzvot that make us remember the Mikdash in a way that we dream and hope that it'll be built one day. It connects us to the past, but also creates a dream and a hope for the future. Those, I think, are the ideas behind these two Maslulim of Zecher LaMikdash and Zecher LaChurban. And as I said before, I think that in personal losses, it's sometimes a good idea to apply them too. And I think they can help us remember the past and hope for the future. Yeah, those were thoughts, as I said to you before, of an idea that I learned last year in Camp Stone, sitting where Rav Adi sitting right now, and I wanted to share this idea with you, that I thought of developing it in Camp Stone, in the wonderful Bet Midrash that we have in camp. And I want to wish everyone in camp Hatzlacha, and Bezrat Hashem, we should meet again very soon with good health and B'briut Eitana. We should all meet Bezrat Hashem together wherever we might be, but continuing the wonderful work that you're all doing in camp, Bezrat Hashem in next year, next summer in camp itself. Maybe, who knows, maybe it'll be in Eretz Yisrael. We'll move camp to Eretz Yisrael, but if not, then we should be back in camp.